Hi everyone, welcome to Couchbase Coding with Matthew Groves. This is a 10-minute slice of my day as a developer advocate, live on Twitch every day at Matthew D. Groves. Check out old episodes on YouTube. Some quick business. The webcam is still off because my appearance is still not quite 100%, and I don't want to record it on video permanently. Though everyone was very polite today and didn't ask about it at the conference, so maybe it's not as bad as I think. But speaking of the conference, I was talking to Brendan Enrick today at the Momentum Conference in Cincinnati. Make sure to check out his stream on here at Twitch. Dev Chatter is where you want to go for that. He suggests that longer streams, we're talking in an hour or more length, are better for this type of format for coding. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Do you like the shorter episodes that I'm doing, or do you want me to do longer ones? That sort of thing. So hit me up on Twitter or email and let me know. I just noticed that my resolution was off, so I'm going to fix that real quick here. Okay, that should look more like it. All right, and number 4 of my mission statement today of why am I doing the live stream? I want to be a better developer advocate. And number 4 is that I want to show you what it's like to be a DA. You know, sometimes it's great, it's really rewarding, it's fun. Today is my 2-year anniversary as a DA at Couchbase, and I'm loving it a lot. But it's not always as great as what it might appear on the outside. You know, there's a lot of speaking at conferences, a lot of blogging, that stuff's all great. Sometimes it's frustrating, tedious, challenging. It's just like anything else, really. So I want to hopefully just give you a little slice of that, and that's number 4 in my bullet list. All right, so today I'm going to do kind of a follow-up to yesterday's stream. We looked at a question about the REST API on Stack Overflow and some suggestions I thought of for that approach to maybe help anyone else who has similar issues along the way. And I'm also going to show you some of the cool open source stuff we're doing with Couchbase documentation, which I find to be awesome. I wrote a blog post about it a while ago when it was first introduced. I'm going to show you a little bit of that today. All right, so here is the page we were looking at yesterday, creating and editing buckets, the REST API for that. It's this post to this endpoint here. The user was kind of hung up, I think, because he was putting data in the query string instead of in the body, and it may not be entirely clear from this documentation that's what you're supposed to do, even though I think if you've used REST before, you're probably, if you're going to use a post, you want to put stuff in the body. But it maybe makes sense to make that a little more clear here. And in the long run, it might make sense to create a page or a starter kit or something like that, a video. Well, I guess I made the video yesterday. But to sort of add some more documentation there to be more specific about that. So I thought we would go ahead and just show you how to make that start happening. And if you are looking at Couchbase documentation, you notice a typo, an inaccuracy, something that could be improved or formatted and better. We have these links at the top of every page that says edit on GitHub. And this makes it really easy for you to contribute. You don't even have to be much of a Git expert, honestly. You just need a GitHub account. It'll take you, click that link, it'll take you right to the page that makes up that documentation. Now, right now, we're using a format for this called DITA, D-I-T-A. That's going to be changing in the future to ASCII doc. So if you're familiar with ASCII doc, that is coming. I much prefer ASCII doc. This DITA is more like an XML format that kind of reminds me of my book writing days. It's not the worst, but it is a little bit tricky sometimes. So I think ASCII doc will be the way of the future there. At least that's what I'm hoping. All right, so anyway, this is the markup for the page we're looking at. This markup gets compiled and run through some steps and things, but what we're looking for is this portion here, list of payload parameters for new buckets. So let's just do a quick find. I'm not seeing that here. Payload parameters. Maybe I'm not too familiar with this GitHub search. It's not finding it. We'll just scroll through. Oh, here it is. List of payload parameters for the new bucket. And so my suggestion might be formatted as, and what do they call it in Postman? They called it form URL encoded. So maybe this should be in the body of the post as form URL encoded, or x www form URL encoded. I don't know if that is clear enough. Certainly we need some more notes on this when I actually do the pull request. So form URL encoded. Okay. So that's what I'm going to suggest there. And so what this does up here, and notice that this message says you're editing a file in a project you don't have write access to. So I don't have, direct access to this repo. It's called docs.cb4 on Couchbase, which is fine. What I can do is I can fork this project into my own copy of the repository, make a change, and then submit that change as what's called a pull request back to the Couchbase Docs team, which will run it through some automated processes, their own review process, and then they can either choose to accept and merge my request, or ask me for some more feedback, some more tweaks, or they can just flat out ignore it. Now, I know the Docs team is not going to do that. They're going to look at these requests as they have time and consider what I'm asking for. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and at the bottom here, I can just say propose file change. So GitHub's going to do all the work for you. I've already forked this previously in my own mgroves docs.cb4, but if you haven't done that, this will do that process for you automatically. It will create the fork and go on from there. So I'm going to propose a file change, and this is kind of an important part of the communication here, is a quick little summary and then a longer description. So my proposed file change here is, I guess I'm trying to add more specifics around the, what was it called, request data expected. So looks like it's suggesting that this is too long. It's maybe one character too long. I'll go with it. All right, and so I'm going to just add a note here that it may not be clear that the request data should be in the body of the post as a form parameter. Someone passing the values in the URL or as JSON could possibly will get a possibly confusing response. And I'm going to further suggest here, since this is common in all the endpoint documentation, well, I'd say most of the endpoint documentation, it might be, or do you think it would be a good idea to create a new documentation page under the REST area to explain how to explain the details of making a HTTP post, put, get, etc., and just link to that instead of having to put these details on every REST doc page. So I don't know if that's too much detail or not enough, or if I'm crazy. This is kind of part of the thing about contributing to open source, is that a lot of people get intimidated and they're worried, like, oh, I'm going to sound like an idiot, or this is not going to be useful, it's going to just annoy them. And I find that most people who are working on open source repositories are actually very grateful to get any sort of contribution from the community at all. It may not be exactly what they want, and they may give you some gentle correction, as I fully expect, because I don't do a lot of these to the documentation myself. I'm not on the docs team. I'm on the DA team. It's a separate team at Couchbase. So I expect them to come back at me with some questions. They're not going to just take what I enter here and merge it in automatically. Even if I'm at Couchbase, so you might think, well, heck, you should be able to edit these directly. Absolutely not. This needs to go through their review process. It needs to make sense. And so I fully expect some correction and some follow-up questions to this. But my advice to you is, if you're worried about this kind of thing, just submit. If the open source project maintainers are jerks, they might come back and get angry at you. But in my experience, that is not the case for the vast majority of people working on open source projects. They're going to be grateful for any even minor contribution, typo correction, or any little thing. They're going to be really happy that you are reading the documentation and you care enough to actually try to improve it. So that's just my advice to you if you're worried about that. So I'm going to propose this change here, and I'm up against the 10 minutes. So there we go. Looks like I have made this change here, and you can see I can go ahead and now create a pull request, and it just puts my description in there. So I'll go ahead and I'll just do a quick preview. Looks okay. Let's create that pull request. And so there we go. Now it created a pull request. Notice that this is pull request number 2430. So we've got quite a lot of contributions to the docs already. A lot of those are from the Couchbase people, but we do have a lot of community contributions as well. And so here's some of the automatic scripting. It's going to try to build my documentation to see if it actually merges successfully. It's going to run the DITA compiler and things like that to make sure I didn't screw up the syntax, which is totally possible. I could have done that. I don't know how long that's going to take to run, but we don't have to sit here and wait for it. Anyway, that's my advice to you. If you see something in documentation, Microsoft does this same sort of thing with docs.microsoft.com. Create a pull request. Do it in GitHub. It's really easy. Just correct a typo. It's a great way to get started in open source contributions, and don't be nervous about it. They're going to be more likely grateful for your feedback and your help than not. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. Should be at normal time around 12:30ish tomorrow. Oh, look at that. All checks have passed. Fantastic. So now it's up for review. Excellent.